New information tonight on the suspect accused of planting those bombs in New York City and New Jersey. We'll look at the investigation and also how Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton have been reacting to it. Then new reports saying former President George H.W. Bush is planning to vote for Hillary Clinton. One of Bush's former aides is here to discuss. And also day 2 of the Bridgegate trial. Prosecutors are saying Chris Christie knew all about the lane closures as they happened. If true, where does that leave the embattled governor? Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman, in tonight for Richard French. One day after police caught Ahmad Khan Ramani following a shootout in New Jersey, we're learning a lot more about the man now suspected of planting bombs in New York and New Jersey.
We now know that the man believed to be responsible for this bombing in New York, 2 bombings in New Jersey, and a manhunt that ended in a shootout with police is 28-year-old Ahmad Khan Ramani, a naturalized American citizen born in Afghanistan. Rahami's seen here in his high school yearbook in Edison, New Jersey, and worked at his family restaurant, First American Fried Chicken. But there were alarm bells. 2 years ago, Rahami's own father told the FBI that his son was hanging out with bad people. But after warning the FBI in 2014, he later took back that statement. The FBI continued to investigate but found no links to terrorism. And federal officials tell ABC News that a journal was found on Rahami during that firefight with police. In it, references to a radical American al-Qaeda cleric, Anwar al-Awlaki, whose writings have been linked to a number of terrorist attacks and plots in the U.S. Now, Rahami's being held on charges of attempted murder for that shootout with police as authorities build their case against him in the bombings.
There was the pipe bombs using black powder. There were the pressure cooker bombs using what's called tannerite. So where did he get these materials? Where did he build the bomb?
And the other big question, what exactly happened during Rahami's recent year-long trip to Afghanistan and Pakistan?
That's the latest on the investigation. Of course, terror also playing out on the campaign trail. Here's a taste of what the candidates have been saying about it.
We have to start profiling. We're looking at people and everybody's supposed to be treated equally. Well, it doesn't work that way. It's radical Islamic terrorism.
We've heard that from former CIA Director Michael Hayden, who made it a very clear point when he said Donald Trump is being used as a recruiting sergeant for the terrorists.
All right, let's get to our panel for analysis. Joining us tonight, Michael Tobman. Michael is an independent political consultant. Welcome back. Dominic Carter is here, as always, political journalist and author. And on the other side of the table, Giancarlo Parasuti is a former aide to President George H.W. Bush. More on President Bush's busy day in the headlines coming up in just a little bit. But first of all, we heard the 2 arguments politically coming from the 2 candidates, Donald Trump calling for profiling and Hillary Clinton saying that Trump is a recruiting tool for ISIS. Are those arguments both effective? Which one do you think might be the more effective of the 2, Michael?
I'm loath to say it, but Trump's position and Trump's argument seems to be more effective. He's talking about the issue and she's talking about him. And those are 2 very different conversations. And there she goes again, citing establishment figures as to say, here are validators who agree with me that Trump is being reckless. Well, Trump is being reckless, but Trump, meanwhile, is talking about the issue, which is what people want to hear, while she's talking about the candidate and how he's being irresponsible. 2 very different conversations. I believe one will resonate with voters. Sad to say, one won't.
Giancarlo, the conventional wisdom is that if terror becomes a big issue in the campaign trail, that's probably going to help Donald Trump. Generally helps Republicans. They're seen as tougher on terrorism and tougher on military-related issues. There might even be some gender bias in all of this as well. Well, a man's better positioned to handle this than a woman is. You look at the polls, and Donald Trump has an advantage when it comes to terrorism, at least in the latest national polls, by about 6 or 8 points, although it's not the biggest issue. And there you see some of the numbers. Among all voters, he's got a lead of 6 points when it comes to better able to handle terrorism, a much bigger lead among independent voters, though surprisingly moderates favor Clinton on this. Take me through, in your mind, the political machinations and how this impacts the presidential race.
I'm not sure I agree with those poll numbers, and I'll explain why in a minute. I think in a general sense, yes, everything you said in the setup is true. Terrorism, foreign affairs tend to benefit Republicans from a public perception standpoint. But you look at how this case in particular went down, and all credit to the New York City Police Department for, in less than 48 hours, apprehending this. I mean, it truly is amazing. So something worked. Now, Trump is trying to make the argument that, well, it never should have happened in the first place. I'm not sure that's how the public, when all is said and done and the dust is settled, I'm not sure that's how the voting public is going to analyze this. They're going to say, we had a process in place to catch bad actors. We understand Hillary's argument that you can't predict and you can't diffuse every situation before it occurs, but clearly we as a country, or in this case New York City, has prepared itself and executed brilliantly when it came to apprehending the suspect. And so I think in this instance, advantage Hillary.
Dom, let's drill down on that a little bit, because it seems like the argument there would be that Hillary is looking to sort of apprehend the people after the fact. Trump's talking about trying to prevent what might be unpreventable, but wouldn't that play to fearful voters?
One can make the case, but I think I would agree with the argument that was just said, advantage Hillary. Here's why. I understand the points that have just been made, but the closer we get towards the election, I think that voters are it's no longer a joke. And the more and more that these types of things, these horrible incidents happen, I think Americans are looking for real leadership, for deliberate, smart leadership. And let's be frank and honest about it, Donald Trump is a sideshow. He talks a good game, says a bunch of nonsense, but the closer we get to the election, it's about real solutions.
Of course I agree with Dominic. However, we're viewing this at this table through the prism of what makes sense and what's rational and what's happening in our sort of metropolitan area, urban space. What that has to do with Western Pennsylvania and Ohio and parts of Florida is closer to Trump's position than, yeah, I'm a New Yorker, born and raised, except for 5 years in Albany. I've always been in Brooklyn. The NYPD did a stellar job, and I should have led with that. I apologize, and of course you're right. All that being said, that's not for us. It's for other people in other parts of the country, and he's talking about what happened, and she's talking about
Michael,
politics.
Here's what is for us. I mean, and I'm
This is
surprised
like a
this
role
didn't.
reversal.
Yeah, I know. I'm
is a
surprised
role
this didn't get
reversal.
more pickup. I mean, Trump almost went down the path of accusing police of not doing their job because they were afraid of racial profiling. I mean, he made that statement in the aftermath of this whole episode, and it was only until the NYPD and the Linden PD did such a great job of apprehending this person that he walked that back.
That got caught up in Andrew Cuomo being quicker to say that this was an act of terrorism than our mayor and things having to do with their politics.
My point is, Donald Trump can't help himself. I mean, even when
That's
you would think that the demographics favor him in terms of the argument, he can't help but say something stupid that is fundamentally untrue and cause doubt in the minds of voters about whether this guy is
But will it be seen by voters as being fundamentally stupid? Because again, if you take away the practicality of what he's saying, because I think we would all agree it's impossible to prevent these kinds of things if somebody's really that committed to doing something evil or damaging. But he is speaking to trying to prevent that overall, or at least telling people that he can. And for people who aren't as invested in the process as the four of us are, you don't think that would play to low information in undecided voters?
To a certain extent, it certainly would. And look, he's got a point, and we're gonna hear now all about how did this guy get in the country in the first place? And look at this administration. They want to let in all these people, and then the whole Skittles debate. That unfolded. But and by the way, I mean, I think there's some validity to that argument. So I'm not saying that the Trump's points are not, by Trump's I mean both the juniors and the seniors, aren't without merit. But in the aggregate, to Dominic's point, I think that the steady hand of leadership favors Hillary.
Trump would be smart to just shut up, stick to what his advisors, what Kellyanne Conway is telling him to do, and stop provoking fear. It was cute for a while. It's emotional, Andrew.
I want a unicorn, and I want world peace. None of those things are going to happen.
Yeah, that's true. But the closer we get to the election, the more he's exposing himself, and it's not a good thing.
Last question on this topic. In the last poll, which I think was a CBS poll about 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, 8% of voters said terrorism was their number one issue, which is the third biggest number for any issue in this race, behind jobs and the economy. If there is, knock on wood, no further attack, nothing else that happens in the United States, is this incident enough to raise that number and actually make terrorism more of a voting issue in this election, Michael?
Yes, it's not just about what happened, it's how it is presented. And I'm remembering the terror attacks in Spain that led to the removal of the prime minister there, and the subway attacks, exactly, and the attacks, the underground attacks in London, and how that has shifted the political political discourse there, and we have to look at what happened with the Brexit vote, where no attacks necessarily happened. There was just a migrant crush. But we'll talk about that in the
So even if nothing else happens, you still think there might be more voters who decide based on terrorism as the issue?
It'll be elevated.
You agree, Giancarlo?
I think it depends on who the voters are. I mean, I read today somewhere, I can't remember where, that suburban white women are no secret that they're going to be decisive in this election. They usually always are, but are favoring Hillary in large measure on this issue. So whereas I think there is a certain demographic that is attracted to the Trump position on all this, it might not be the right demographic that he needs to win the election.
The same suburban white women that voted for her in areas where there were not enough registered Democrats to give Hillary the numbers she got running for the U.S. Senate in 2000, Massapequa Park, places like that, Republican women.
That leads us to our first break. When we come back, we're going to get the latest from the campaign trail. We're going to look at the latest polls, the latest gaffes, the Skittles tweet, and the upcoming debate.